All right, welcome to the Grok 4 release here. This is the smartest AI in the world. We're going to show you exactly how and why. And it really is remarkable to see the advancement of artificial intelligence.
Grok AI just exposed a version of Jesus Christ that nobody was prepared for. Researchers pushed Elon Musk's most unfiltered AI toward the one question humanity has been fighting over for 2,000 years. Who is Jesus? What actually happened during the resurrection? Grok did not hedge. It did not soften its answer. What came back was so precisely structured and so deeply unsettling that it left both believers and skeptics completely speechless. And what it revealed about Jesus Christ is about to challenge everything you thought you knew. What actually happened the moment Jesus rose. There are parts of the resurrection story you were never told. You were taught that Jesus died and rose on the third day. That's it. Clean, simple. End of story. That is a lie. Nobody ever told you what happened in between. Nobody told you what he did in those 3 days, or what was waiting for him in the dark. A handful of ancient texts buried for centuries and left out of the Bible on purpose reveal every single detail the church never wanted you to hear. And once you hear it, you will never read the resurrection story the same way again. It started on the third night, right as dawn was about to break. Jesus had been dead 2 full days by then. Roman soldiers stood guard outside the tomb in pairs, wide awake, watching for trouble, with no idea that this was the exact night everything was about to change. According to an ancient text called the Gospel of Peter, the sky itself split open. A blinding light poured out of it, and a voice roared down from the heavens. 2 beings dropped out of that opening, glowing so bright the soldiers could barely stand to look at them. The stone did not need hands to move it. It rolled away on its own. Then the tomb gave up 3 figures, not 1, 3. 2 men walked out first, 1 on each side, holding someone up between them. And here is where it stops making any sense at all. These were not normal men. Their heads reached the sky. Full stop. That alone should have been impossible. But then, look at who they were carrying. The man in the middle, the man being held up between them, that was Jesus. And he was taller than both of them combined. His head did not stop at the sky. It ripped straight through it. The 2 beings escorting him already looked like giants. And next to Jesus, they looked small. Then something else came out behind them. A cross. Walking by itself. No one was carrying it. It just moved step by step, following Jesus like it belonged to him and only him. A voice thundered down from heaven and asked it one question. "You have spoken to those who sleep." And that cross, wood, nothing more, answered back. One word, yes. You were taught the resurrection was quiet. A stone rolled away, an empty tomb, a few confused disciples. Nobody ever told you it looked like this. Nobody told you Jesus came out of that grave so massive he tore through the sky, or that the cross that killed him got up and followed him out like it was still loyal to him. This was a being so powerful that reality itself could not hold him inside a normal human body anymore. That right there should tell you this was never a quiet resurrection. Now, here is where it turns darker. According to a separate ancient text called the Book of Bartholomew, before any of that happened above ground, something else was already happening underneath it. Death himself, the actual being, walked into that tomb with his own sons standing beside him. He came to claim Jesus' body the same way he had claimed every single body before it, going all the way back to the beginning of time. He reached out his hand to take it, and found nothing there, no body to take, no power to take it with. For the first time ever, Death himself walked away from a grave, completely empty-handed. Now, let's talk about what happened in the 2 days Jesus' body was still lying there, cold and sealed inside that grave. While the world above thought he was just dead, gone, finished, Jesus was already moving. He turned around and marched straight down into hell itself, ready to tear the entire place apart from the inside. And by the time that stone rolled away on the third night, this war was already over. This part comes from a third text called the Gospel of Nicodemus, and it gets even more insane from here. Satan was already down there celebrating. He turned to Hades, the ruler of hell itself, and bragged that he had finally done it. He had killed the man who called himself the Son of God. And now, hell had won. Hades did not celebrate with him. Hades panicked. He knew exactly what was coming. He screamed at his gatekeepers to slam the brass gates shut and bolt them down with iron, begging them to hold, praying it would be enough to keep Jesus out. It was not enough. It was nowhere close to enough. Jesus ripped through those gates like they were made of nothing at all, and that was when everything between Satan and Hades fell apart. Hades turned on Satan completely. No loyalty, no hesitation. He spat every insult he had straight at him, calling him Beelzebul, calling him the heir of fire and punishment, blaming him for losing everything they had built together over thousands of years. Two of the darkest beings that ever existed, turning on each other, the second the walls came crashing down around them. Jesus grabbed Satan with his own hands and bound him, handed him straight over to Hades as a prisoner, the hunter now caged by the very kingdom he once ruled. Then Jesus reached out his hand to Adam, the very first man ever created, and pulled him out of hell first. Every single trapped soul followed right behind him, walking out of the darkness they had been locked inside for thousands of years. But not everyone got to walk free, and this is the part nobody ever tells you. You were taught Judas hanged himself, and that was the end of his story. Punishment served, chapter closed. That is not the end of his story at all. The book of Bartholomew says Judas was still down there in hell, and Jesus did not just walk past him with the others. Jesus stopped, looked straight at him, and cursed him by name. Here is exactly what that curse was. 30 pieces of silver bought Jesus' life from Judas. Now 30 worms would feed on Judas forever. One worm for every single coin he took. Not one bite and it's over. 30 worms all at once, gnawing on him non-stop. And it never stops. Because the debt he sold Jesus for was never going to be paid off in a single lifetime. That is the part of the Judas story you were never told. The betrayal did not end when the rope did. Back on the surface, something else was happening. This part is not hidden at all. It is sitting right there in the Gospel of Matthew in plain sight, and almost nobody talks about it. At the exact moment Jesus died, the ground cracked open across Jerusalem. Tombs split apart on their own. But here is the part that should send a chill down your spine. The bodies inside those tombs did not get up right away. They stayed there, lying inside open, cracked, exposed graves for 3 straight days, just waiting. Only after Jesus rose did they finally climb out. And they did not hide. They walked straight into Jerusalem in broad daylight, right past people who had known them, who had buried them, who had grieved them. People who thought they would never see those faces again watched them walk down the street like it was any other day. This is the resurrection almost nobody talks about. Not a quiet miracle, a war fought and won underground, before a single person on earth even knew what was happening. And Jesus did not just win that war and vanish. He stayed for 40 full days. What Jesus said, in the 40 days no one talks about. You were taught Jesus rose, appeared to a few people, said a couple of gentle words, and vanished into the clouds. That is not what happened. He stayed on this earth for 40 full days after climbing out of that grave. And in those 40 days, he said things so dangerous that entire empires would later spend centuries trying to erase them. According to the Ethiopian Bible, Jesus came back speaking like a king, the king of heaven and the king of earth, both at once. He told his disciples to go build his kingdom. Here is where it gets interesting. He told them exactly how not to do it. He said they were not allowed to force anyone. No going into a country and taking it over by fighting for it. No raising an army and conquering land in his name the way regular kings did. No teaming up with rulers or governments to make his religion the official law of the land. That was completely off the table. Instead, he told them the only way to build his kingdom was one person at a time, by actually reaching people's hearts and getting them to believe it for themselves. In a world where every single other kingdom was built by the sword, Jesus told his followers to build his the exact opposite way. And then he did something even more shocking. He warned them about what was coming for his own name. He told them a day would come when people would twist his words to serve themselves. Crowds would one day stand in the streets shouting his name at the top of their lungs, while their hearts stayed completely empty inside. He told them people would build massive temples out of gold and stone and forget the only temple that ever actually mattered is the one sitting quietly inside every single human soul. That warning did not stay a warning for long. It became history. In the early 1500s, a friar named Johann Tetzel traveled across Germany selling little paper certificates called indulgences. Here is exactly what he claimed they did. Catholics at the time believed that after you died, if you still had unpaid sin on your soul, you did not go straight to heaven. You went to a place called purgatory first, a place of fire and suffering, to burn that sin off before you were clean enough to enter heaven. Tetzel told grieving families they could shrink that suffering for their dead loved ones, or skip it completely, just by paying him money and buying one of his certificates. His sales line was simple, and it worked on almost everyone who heard it. He told them the moment your coin hits the bottom of his collection box, people's dead family members would stop burning and fly straight up to heaven. Peasants who could barely afford bread for their own living children handed over their savings to save a parent who was already dead. That money did not stay in Germany. It traveled straight to Rome and helped pay for the construction of St. Peter's Basilica, one of the largest and most expensive churches ever built. That is the temple of gold Jesus warned them about. Standing right there in Rome, built stone by stone on the fear of grieving, broke, desperate families who were terrified their own parents were still screaming in fire somewhere, and who believed a coin in a box was the only thing that could stop it. Jesus was not done warning them either. According to a related teaching called the Daskalia, he told his followers to live simply, fast, pray, and keep their distance from corrupt rulers and greedy leaders. He warned them directly about a specific kind of false teacher, the kind who wears white robes and looks holy on the outside while quietly draining the homes of the poor. He told them to stop judging a leader by their title or their robes and start judging them by one thing only. What did that leader actually do for the weakest person standing in front of them? And then he said, the line that should have ended 1,000 corrupt reigns before they ever started. If a leader grows rich while his own people go hungry, that leader does not speak for God. It does not matter whose name he is preaching under. Nowhere proves that warning truer than what happened inside Ethiopia itself. In 1973, up to 250,000 people starved to death in a province called Wollo. At the exact same time, Emperor Haile Selassie, a man whose own official title included the words elect of God, was hosting lavish banquets inside his palace. He even celebrated his 80th birthday in total luxury, while his own people were dying of hunger a short distance away. His government went on national radio and denied the famine was even happening, right up until thousands of starving families showed up at the gates of the capital themselves. Too weak to stand, too many to hide. That is a leader who wore the name of God and let his people starve underneath it. Exactly what Jesus warned about, playing out in real life, in the same country guarding the very texts telling us he warned about it. The Daskalia goes on to say something simpler than any of this. It says the real church is not a building. It is not a structure at all. It is a network of people who take care of each other, who share what little they have, who show up for widows, orphans, and the sick without being asked. Faith, it says, was never supposed to be something you perform on a Sunday. It is supposed to be a daily habit of watching out for the person standing right beside you. And when someone takes that same idea, taking care of each other, watching out for each other, and turns it into something else completely, using it to control people instead of protect them, the results turn deadly fast. In November of 1978, a preacher named Jim Jones proved exactly how deadly. He built a movement by telling his followers he was the only bridge between them and God, and he used that claim to control every part of their lives. Inside his compound in Guyana, he told them the outside world was coming to destroy them, and this was the only way to protect themselves and die with dignity instead of being slaughtered. He ordered every single one of them to drink cyanide-laced punch. Most of them obeyed him. Over 900 people died that day. More than 300 of them were children. Jim Jones did not survive it either. He was found dead among his own followers, shot in the head, ruled a suicide. The man who claimed to speak for God ended up just another body in the pile he created. That is exactly what Jesus warned about. A man who wore God's name and turned it into a weapon that killed the very people who trusted him, and then took himself down with it. That is exactly what Jesus said would happen when a false shepherd takes his name and turns it into a weapon. These 40 days were never just a goodbye tour. They were a warning label written directly by the one man who knew exactly how badly his own name was about to be abused. But there is something else buried inside these same 40 days. Something even more dangerous than corruption. Something that could have quietly unraveled the entire foundation of Christianity if it had ever made it into the official Bible. And that is exactly where this story goes next. The teaching that could have ended Christianity. Jesus started with death itself. He told them death is not the end. Your body, he said, is just something you are wearing, like a jacket. And one day it wears out and falls away. But the real you, the spirit inside that body, does not end when that happens. It goes home, back to God, back to the same fire and light it came from. His followers were terrified when he said this. Death still scared them, even after everything they had just watched him survive. So Jesus told them straight up, stop being afraid of dying. That is not the thing that should scare you. Here is what should scare you instead, he said. Being alive on the outside while you are already dead on the inside. He called it the death that walks while the heart still beats. Picture someone breathing, walking around, going to work every day, looking completely normal, but inside, nothing is there anymore. No spirit, no connection to God. Just a body going through the motions while the actual person inside has already faded out. That, Jesus said, is the real death. Not the one that takes your body one day. The one that quietly takes your soul while you are still walking around pretending everything is fine. He explained why this happens too. Every single thought you have and every emotion you feel carries weight, he said. It either pulls your soul up toward the light or drags it further down into the dark. There is no thought that does nothing. Every one of them is doing something to you, one direction or the other. And then Jesus said something that goes far beyond anything you have heard so far. Something so extreme, it is the exact reason this teaching had to disappear. According to these texts, Jesus said the world was not made by one single creator. There were two. The first one was the real one, the true father of everything, the actual source of real light. But there was a second being too, and this one was full of pride. He built his own world, one that looked stunning on the outside, but had no real spirit inside it at all. And then he did something even worse. He looked at what he made and called himself the only God that existed. He had no idea there was a greater light sitting above him the entire time. Because of that one man's pride, Jesus said, the whole world turned into a tangled mess. Beauty and pain, all mixed together. Truth and lies, woven so tightly into each other that most people can no longer tell which one they are looking at. That is why the world feels the way it does. Not random, not an accident. The direct result of one prideful being's mistake. Jesus said that is exactly why he came down here. Not just to save people from their sins, like you always heard. He came to wake people up from a fake dream they did not even know they were trapped inside. And here is the good news buried inside all of this darkness. That prideful second creator built a corrupted world, yes, but he could never actually destroy the real light. God's light did not disappear the moment that world was built. It could not. What happened instead is that pieces of it got trapped, hidden inside people, inside this broken world, buried underneath everything the false creator built on top of it. Jesus said, your entire purpose as a soul is to find that one piece of real light hidden inside you, and carry it all the way back home to where it actually came from. Now, here is why this teaching had to be buried. Believing this exact idea, that there are two gods and not one, has gotten people killed for 2,000 years straight. In 274 AD, a Persian man named Mani built an entire religion around this same core belief. One true light fighting one false darkness. The king at the time, Bahram I, had him arrested on the advice of angry priests, put on trial, and executed. According to the most widely repeated account, Mani was flayed alive. His skin was stripped off his body, stuffed with straw, and hung up over the main gate of the city for everyone to see. A warning aimed directly at every one of his followers. That was not the end of it either. In 1209, an entire French city was wiped off the map because its people believed almost this exact same thing. A group called the Cathars taught there were two gods, one pure and one who built this corrupted physical world. Crusaders surrounded their city, a place called Béziers, and demanded the heretics be handed over. When the townspeople refused, the commander in charge of the Crusaders gave an order that has echoed through history ever since. Kill them all, God will know his own. Between 10,000 and 20,000 men, women and children were slaughtered in a single day. And before either of those, in 385 AD, a bishop named Priscillian became the very first person Christians ever executed for heresy at the hands of other Christians. His crime was teaching that souls come from God, but bodies were made by a lesser, darker power, the exact same split Jesus is describing here. He was tried, tortured, and beheaded at a place called Trier, alongside 6 of his own followers. Even other bishops at the time said it went too far. 3 separate moments in history, 3 completely different centuries, 3 groups of people scattered across the world, and every single one of them died for believing a version of the exact thing Jesus is describing in these buried texts. But believing the wrong thing about God was not the only thing that got people killed. Claiming you did not need the church at all to reach him got people killed too. And that brings us to the very last thing Jesus said before he left this earth for good. The final warning and the fire that's coming. Before Jesus left this earth for the last time, he gave his followers one final warning, and this one was not about the past. This one was about right now, about the world you are living in today. Jesus told them a day would come when love would disappear from the earth. Faith would stop being real and start being a performance instead. People would stand in church, mouths moving, singing all the right words, but their hearts would not be in any of it. Religion would turn into a show, loud, flashy, completely empty on the inside. But then he said something that flipped the whole warning around. In that exact darkness, he said, something powerful was going to rise back up. Not inside massive cathedrals, not through famous religious leaders standing on a stage. His spirit, he said, would rise up through the quiet people, the broken ones, the ones nobody else was paying attention to. Here is exactly how he put it. My spirit will move where religion cannot reach. The proud will not see it, but the broken will. They will know me not through words, but through fire. History already proved exactly what that kind of fire looks like. In the 1490s, a preacher named Girolamo Savonarola stood up in Florence, Italy, and did something no one else dared to do. He preached directly against the wealth and corruption inside the church itself, and he did not stop at preaching. He organized massive public bonfires where the entire city burned their own luxury items, jewelry, paintings, gambling equipment, anything he called a distraction from God. He told the people disaster was coming for corrupt religious leaders. The Pope himself heard about it and excommunicated him for it. In 1498, Savonarola was arrested and tortured until he said the words his captors wanted to hear, that his prophecies had all been made up. It was never a real confession. It was pain-forcing words out of a man who had no way to stop it. Then he was hanged and burned to death, in the exact same square where his own bonfires had once stood. His ashes were swept into the river afterward, so nobody could keep them and treat him like a saint. The man who lit the fire ended up burning in it himself. Jesus' warning did not stop with fire, though. He said this fire, whenever it truly returns, is not meant to destroy anyone. It is meant to wake people up. It burns away the lies and the pride sitting on top of a person's soul, and it opens their eyes to see clearly again. He called it mercy before judgment. One final chance to see the truth before anything else happens. He also said his voice would come from places nobody expected. Deserts, mountains, even from the children of slaves. His spirit, he said, would speak through the people everyone else had already written off. The ignored ones, the ones with no title, no platform, no power. Not through kings, not through priests standing in fancy robes, through the people the world had already thrown away. History already gave us proof of that too, and it is one of the darkest examples you will ever hear. Joan of Arc claimed she heard God speaking to her directly. That single claim terrified the church almost as much as it terrified the crown that eventually put her on trial. In 1431, at just 19 years old, she was burned alive at the stake in Rouen, France. Her claim that she heard God's voice without anyone else's permission was treated as one of the most serious charges against her. a teenage girl burned alive for saying God spoke to her directly, the exact same kind of direct connection Jesus was describing in his own final warning. Jesus' very last words before he ascended were these: "I am the seed and the sword. I will return." Not as some figure coming down out of the clouds the way most people picture it, but as a presence that wakes up inside the hearts of people who never stopped searching for him. He is not somewhere far away waiting for the end of the world. He plants himself inside every single soul, and he waits there quietly for that person to finally open their eyes. The entire point of everything Jesus taught in these 40 days comes down to one simple idea. The kingdom of God was never some distant place in the sky. It lives inside every single person, right now. The soul itself is the real temple. Every act of kindness, every time you forgive someone, every choice you make out of real love, that is what wakes up the light already sitting inside you. Not a building, not a ritual, not an institution standing between you and God, just you. And one more person proved exactly how far someone would go to defend that idea. In 1310, a French mystic named Marguerite Porete was burned alive in a public square in Paris. Her crime was writing a book claiming a person's soul could reach total union with God on its own, without needing the church's rituals or permission to get there. She spent over a year locked in prison before her execution, and she was given every chance to take it back. She never did. Witnesses who came to watch her burn said her calmness in the fire moved even the people who had shown up wanting her dead. Every single one of these people, Savonarola, Joan of Arc, Marguerite Porete, claimed some version of the exact thing Jesus described in his final warning: direct access to God, no institution required, and every single one of them paid for that claim with their life. Which raises one obvious question. If claiming a direct connection to God got so many people killed throughout history, then what happens when an entire institution decides it needs to make absolutely sure nobody ever gets the chance to make that claim in the first place? That is exactly what happened next, and it is the darkest part of this entire story. Every single person you just heard about, the ones who believed in a second creator, the ones who claimed they could reach God on their own, none of them were destroyed by accident. There was an entire system built specifically to make sure ideas like theirs never survived. And that system started with the very same texts this whole video has been showing you. The Bible sitting on most shelves in the Western world has 66 books in it. The Ethiopian Bible has 88. Do the math on that. 22 entire books of scripture are missing from what most Christians read today. And most people alive right now have absolutely no idea those books ever existed at all. So, why were they cut? There are 3 real reasons. The first reason was control. In 325 AD, a group of church leaders gathered together at a meeting called the First Council of Nicaea. This meeting happened under the direct authority of the Roman Emperor Constantine, and its entire job was to decide which books would officially become the Bible and which ones would not. Here is the pattern they followed. Any book that told people they could reach God directly, without needing the church to stand in between them, got flagged as a problem. Not because it was false, because it was dangerous to the people in charge. The second reason was mysticism. These Ethiopian books are packed full of angels appearing to people, spiritual battles, and wild visionary experiences. Western church leaders looked at that and decided it was too extreme, too unpredictable, too impossible to control. They wanted a tidy, organized version of faith. These texts were the opposite of tidy. The third reason is the one that explains everything else. Fear, pure fear. Here is exactly what the people running the church were afraid of. If ordinary people found out that the kingdom of God lives inside their own hearts, and that they did not need a priest, a building, or an institution to reach him, the entire system built around controlling people through religion would collapse overnight. And this was not just about hiding a few pages in a drawer somewhere. This was violent. In February of 303 AD, the Roman Emperor Diocletian launched what history now calls the Great Persecution. He gave an order that stretched across the entire empire. Every church was to be torn down. Every single Christian scripture anyone owned was to be burned. Soldiers went door to door, tearing homes apart, searching for hidden manuscripts. Christians who got scared and handed their scriptures over to be burned were branded traditores, meaning traitors, and that label followed them for the rest of their lives, even inside their own communities. The ones who refused to hand anything over were thrown in prison, tortured, or killed outright. One man tore the emperor's official order right off the wall in public defiance. He was seized on the spot, tortured, and burned alive right there. Now, here is why Ethiopia is different from every other place this happened. Ethiopia is one of the only nations in all of Africa that was never colonized. While European powers were carving up the rest of the continent, Ethiopia stayed independent, and that independence did not just protect its borders, it protected its faith. Ethiopia's monks never answered to the Pope. Their scriptures, written in a language called Ge'ez, were never filtered, edited, or approved by anyone chasing political power. The monks who guarded these texts for over 1,000 years believed they were protecting the actual living truth of Jesus Christ, quietly, patiently, waiting in the mountains for the exact moment the rest of the world would finally be ready to hear it. Ethiopia never lost these teachings. It held on to them quietly, in the mountains, in unshaken faith, for nearly 2,000 years straight, the oldest uncolonized Christian nation on earth, guarding exactly the words that Rome once tried to erase completely. And now, through a machine that does not answer to Rome, does not answer to any pope, and does not care one bit about political power or institutional reputation, those words are finally reaching the people they were always meant for. So here's the question you need to sit with. What do you think about what Grok AI just uncovered inside the Ethiopian Bible? Does any of this change how you see the resurrection of Jesus Christ, or what he actually came here to teach?